What does it mean to be a hater? Well, I'm glad to pretend you ask. To me, being a hater means that the passion I have for loathing a thing is directly tied to how that thing is received in the public. For instance, I might not think that A Court of Thorns and Roses is the worst book ever written, or even worthy of great negative attention, but the fact that so many people pretend that it's some sort of masterpiece, goading unsuspecting teens into reading this lukewarm trash, justifies the effort that I, and a lot of other people, put into hating on it. The falsely positive view of this bad book cannot go unchallenged. If the public opinion of a piece of media is wildly unfair, it's the hater's job to tilt it back into balance. And yes, I'm aware that that's theatrical and spiteful, and it also means that the way I express my opinion is directly tied to trends, which I don't think is good in any case, but the emotional reality of appreciating the craft of writing is that there are a lot of books out there that are more deserving of the praise that lame romantasy is getting these days. Better books like The Dead Cattail Assassins. Also, rant videos do better. What can I say? I'm rewarded for negativity. So a whole video on why you should read without spoilers, so you actually read it, should be a fun little challenge. Argument 1. Story. Avine's job is to ship people. No, not that kind of shipping. The less divisive kind. Killing people for money. You see, Avine is a servant of Errol, goddess of knives. She's been reanimated by her priests to serve as a necromantic assassin, working off her debt to Errol without any memories of her former life. But things are complicated when Avine is sent out to kill a girl that looks identical to herself. She hesitates to assassinate her, which obviously has dire consequences. In a world in which assassination is legal, a spin on a familiar classic, and presumably controlled by the government, but more so the goddess Errol herself, a reanimated servant really isn't supposed to skip out on a contract. So the story is a race against time, as Avine tries to keep her target alive, find out who she is, and not get stabbed by her own guild members or her goddess along the way. It's so fun, but the heart and soul of the story really is Avine herself. She's the definition of being a little confused, but godding the spirit. She's really funny and self-assured, but she also puts justice and the safety of others before herself, a trait that turns out to be the catalyst of much of the plot. I said I wasn't going to give you any spoilers, so I'm leaving it at that, but as a reader who's hard to satisfy with plot twists, I can tell you I was happy with the resolution to this mystery. Argument 2. Length. This book is tiny. It's an all of 213-page fantasy adventure, making it perfectly bite-sized. The reason it's so short is because there isn't enough plot to make it longer. And you might not think that that sounds like a compliment, but trust me, it is. Restraint is difficult in creative work. It's not like there's an objective guideline on when a story ends. All you really have to go off of are industry norms. But if you write a story to specifically please and adhere to industry norms, that will inevitably suck. And even if you don't do that, wildly lengthening a story that's meant to be short will hurt it. A specimen of the latter variety would be Exordia by Seth Dickinson. I got to read an arc of this book when it was coming out, and let me tell you, it's great, but it's one of those books you don't casually recommend to people you like, at least not before you check whether they're really into abstract math or 2013 core US statecraft. Exordia is so much longer than it needed to be. It could stand to lose at least 3 of its many POVs. It constantly branches off into self-contained backstories. It fails to use any of the information it sets up in those backstories. We take a huge break from everything in the middle of the book just to speculate what kind of math an alien spaceship is operating under? I wanted to tear my hair out reading this. Oh, damn, maybe I really can't do a positive review. And I can't stress enough that Exordia is fantastic. The way Seth Dickinson writes character dynamics is unlike anything I've ever seen. If angry, messy threesome sounds at all appealing to you, power through the math. It will be worth it. But Exordia is great despite its many detours, not because of them. It didn't need to be like this. It didn't need to be like this, Seth. By the way, this is also the #1 complaint people have about the Trader Baru Cormorant, their most successful work. And all of this goes back to how Dickinson comes up with stories. For you see, both Baru and Exordia were originally short stories, so at some point these premises were inflated to novel length. A process Dickinson seems to approach with the same restraint the average person has for methamphetamines. I'm sorry, but do you see how easy it is to overdo it? To get excited about a story and overload it with content? Or even just to give in to the temptation to bring it up to a more marketable word count. Because full-length novels are usually what's making money. Pitfalls that Djèlí Clark managed to avoid. This could have been a Six of Crows-esque adventure mystery novel, but instead, it's a Six of Crows-esque mystery adventure novella, true to a vision. Quick side note that ties into this goes for the title too. The Dead Cattail Assassins is not what comes to mind when you think about the most marketable name. It comes from the heart. And while I have to admit that at some point the formula starts feeling a bit episodic, some guy goes after Ravine and her friends and fails to use their special attack on her, rinse and repeat. All of these throwaway side characters still feel like they could have rich inner lives. Their gimmicks are interesting and bring the action scenes to life. You can really imagine a more expansive story that involves all of them. It's great. My favorite was Basima, by the way. Just another one of those, hey, you know what would be cool, rather than a hey, you know what consumers might approve of? On that note, argument 3, being silly. The Dead Cattail Assassins are not cats, nor do they have tails, but they are most assuredly dead. That is the excerpt that the book was marketed with on the website of my local bookstore. When I read this, alarm bells went off in my head. I'm not a fan of authors casting their own books in this faux mysterious, grandiose light, at least not right off the bat. And don't get me wrong, you should have open passion for your stories, but I find that this can be a sign of lacking self-awareness, like you're overestimating how invested a reader is from the get-go, presuming that they give a shit. Patrick Rothfuss famously did this with the blurb of The Name of the Wind. Where the fuck is that book? Ah! My name is Quoth. I have stolen princesses back from sleeping burrow kings. I burnt down the town of Trebon. I have spent the night with Felurian and left with both my sanity and my life. I was expelled from the university at a younger age than most people are allowed in. I tread paths by moonlight that others fear to speak of during day. I have talked to gods, loved women, and written songs that make the minstrels weep. You may have heard of me. Yeah, okay, Quoth, sweetie, I'm sure that's all true, but you spent like a third of this book as a penniless urchin and the rest of it failing your way upwards at discount Hogwarts. And I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy that as a reader, just that I don't think it's delivering on the promises you made here. Seriously, I'm in awe of people who find this cool. Isn't it so much better to follow an underdog without grandeur slapped on from the start? So, as you can imagine, I was a bit wary of, they are most assuredly dead. But refreshingly, the book opens with a character making fun of the quote. It's the print on the Assassin's Guild's calling cards, and Aveen thinks it's a little stupid. When I tell you, I was right back in the saddle. How fun! Aside from purposeful jokes, it's also apparent that Clark doesn't take himself too seriously. Aveen is just effortlessly funny 24/7. She's the guy in the blockbuster action movie who throws out flirty one-liners while disarming a bomb. Don't pretend you don't eat it up every time. In universe, there's a book series that Aveen likes to read. It's called Ashiel the Maniac Hunter, and it seems to be about as intellectually challenging as it sounds. And yes, it is instrumental to the resolution of the plot. There's a category of mages that are known for doing this place's version of dark magic, and due to the nature of their craft and the fact that they push magic to its morally questionable limits, they're referred to as edgelords. standing ovation. With some fantasy authors, you get the feeling that they're almost aggressively trying not to be funny, making every piece of dialogue some dry exchange of exposition, avoiding contemporary terminology at all costs. Like they're too precious about their own story to risk any degree of whimsy, lest it not be perceived as serious literature. Not Dead Cattail Assassins. You really get the feeling that Clark wasn't afraid to write what was funny to him personally. And that's the kind of confidence and calculated ease you really only get from an experienced writer. I'm realizing that all of this sounds like a veiled insult, but it's not. Being comfortable with your writing voice is a learned skill, and he sure is learned. So, all that being said, Djèlí Clark is definitely on my list of authors to look out for. In a good way this time. He's obviously been very successfully published for years now. I've been aware of the Black God's Drums and the Mastery of Djinn, but I might even breach my strict no horror policy to check out Ring Shout. Although, don't take my word for it. We all know how likely it is that I'll get around to it soon, what with my 10-ton truck TBR. I have put it on pause briefly to read The Lotus Empire, because I've been on the Burning Kingdoms trilogy since book 1, and I've been meaning to do a review about that one too. Spoiler alert, if the ending isn't hugely disappointing, that one might just be positive too. So make sure to comment some books that I will hate for your continued amusement. I guess I propose Powerless. I've heard awful things. And don't forget to read this one, okay? I mean it. Bye.